All right. Well, hey, I'm gonna throw, I guess, a way too early bold prediction your guys' way. And again, just based entirely off preseason. We know that 11 teams won their preseason matches. Who's winning MLS Cup today based on these preseason results? And I can read them off again if you want to get a refresher of who won and there may have been more. I didn't see them published on their websites, and that's what I went off of, just for
So
the
we can only
purposes of this
choose from
next week.
these 11, correct?
Only
That's
from
what I'm
the
hearing.
11
Okay.
that won. Yep. Or actually, I guess it's probably closer to like 8 that won because I think there were some draws in there as well. Unless you want to consider the draws because they could go to penalty shootouts.
Yeah, list them again, just so we have the numbers that we're choosing
Okay.
from.
You could pick FC Cincinnati, who took a win over Montreal. You could take, if we're counting draws, you could take Colorado, who drew Querétaro. You could take DC United and New York Red Bulls, both of whom drew each other. You can take Inter Miami, low hanging fruit right there, who beat Club America. Nashville and Charlotte got a draw. New England, you could pick, as they got a win over St. Louis. They also, in that same article, talked about a win they got over Austin, and Austin did not publicize any preseason results on their website. You could take Orlando City, who got a draw against Atletico Mineiro, but they did do a penalty shootout at the end of that and won on the penalty shootout. And then you could take Portland Timbers, who got a win over Orange County SC. And then finally, the Seattle Sounders with their win over Puskas Academia.
I'll start it off. I will take Seattle. It is very funny to see the Seattle fan base. There, I've seen a lot of people upset about their moves this offseason, but it's funny to see. I feel like the national coverage around the league says this has been like a home run offseason for Seattle, and I'm on that side of it. I think Jesus Ferreira and Paul Arriola, getting them to fit their in a salary cap league, to get the two guys like that into their roster of a really young defense, some young attackers, and still within Jordan Morris, Rodon, um, Pedro De La Vega. You hope has a bounce back year, injury free bounce back year. You saw João Paulo in the depth. You got Nuhu. Like, they just have a really solid group, and adding those two, and with Rusnak, it's going to be fun, and they're going to be able to compete in every tournament. They're going to make the playoffs. They're going to be a top 4 team in the West. So I'm going to take Seattle out of those teams you listed. I think they're going to compete in every competition this year, and they like those knockout tournaments. So we'll see.
That's fair. I'm going to throw a wild card your way right now, Bryce, that I've thought of on the spot. Why is Seattle winning 0 trophies this year?
For the same reasons I said, how strong of a core they are, they just don't have anyone that can take them over the top on the other side of it. They're they don't have the Rui Diaz or Lorderos in their prime anymore. They don't have anyone flowing through that. So if they are going to win, it's going to be Ferreira becoming a top 3 to 5 striker in this league, and I don't think it's going to happen. But I really didn't want to pick Miami, so I just jumped at Seattle right when you listed it.
That's fair. Bo, go ahead and make it hard on Gavin by taking someone who I guess is also not Inter Miami, so that he has to pick them.
Yeah, I will never take the low hanging fruit of Miami. I heard there was a team down there. Some big guy plays there. Have to look into that. No, man, this was really tough because Seattle really has some potential. However, with Bryce, I have concerns. João Paulo's 33. I don't know if Obed Vargas is going to be there past July. So the midfield looks kind of dicey. Christian Roldan stepped in there. So I wanted to go Seattle, and I really want to go New England. I really like some of their moves, but I have zero faith in Caleb Porter. Like, I just think that guy, Yeah, there's no way. If it was anyone else, I'd probably go New England.
Whoa,
But
whoa!
honestly,
Caleb Porter comes up with a MLS Cup out of nowhere, like once every 5 seasons. It feels like. So I feel like
You're saying
he's
he's
due.
due.
Yeah.
my issue is this. So this is kind of where my issue started, because I feel like if you're going to say something like that, you need to back it up, right? Like, a part of a manager is getting the best out of people. Noel Buck 2 years ago under Bruce Arena. I mean, if you look at that team under Bruce Arena, they were they were on the verge of like going to an MLS Cup final. I mean, they were elite. Caleb Porter walked in with the exact same team, and I believe they finished 14th last year. With the exact same team. Noel Buck, who was, up for, the 22 under 22, like body armor thing. Like, the dude was legit, and he did not play at all. And I know that, reports where he was, throwing temper tantrums during training and stuff like that. But he's young, and that's the job of the manager, is to get the best out of those players. And he has not shown an ability to do that. All that said, despite my hate for Caleb Porter, I'm gonna go with Charlotte. Uh, I I like Charlotte, man. I really do. Somehow they have still, as of today, they've still hung on to Adelson Malanda. I don't know how. Uh, their defense is incredible. Like, they're like Tim Ream was just thrown in mid year. I think a lot of people forget when guys come over mid season, they've already played a full entire year, like, of that. So, like, like your Paint Seal, like Ream, like those guys have played a lot. So Malanda, Ream, Privet, like, man, those guys are really good. Then you got Ashley Westwood in midfield, which I'm a big Ashley Westwood guy. Like, Ashley Westwood could slap my mom, and my first question would be like, Ashley, is your hand okay? Like, love that guy. All right. Really do. Love him. And then they've, Patrick Ajimong is just amazing. Somehow they got, is it Liel Abada back on a TAM deal? And then they brought in Wilfred Zaha. Now, if Wilfred Zaha can stay healthy, like, that dude's like an MVP caliber player. Like, I am, like, Charlotte has always been a team I really like to watch, but this year, like, Charlotte is like must watch TV for me.
I'll
They're like
just,
they
as a side note, I think Charlotte's a good pick because of Dean Smith as a coach. Like, that's a coach that when he went into a Charlotte side that was woeful prior to him, and somehow made the players better than the sum of their parts. And then they added to it with quality players. So I think, given this full off season, given time to really like continue to support his vision and bring in high caliber players and bring in guys like Zaha, who are going to be difference makers for that team, I think that's a great shout.
Yeah, I was gonna say I like Charlotte because a reason similar with Seattle on the eastern side, just a very high floor because of that defense. The defense is gonna get them in a position where they're gonna have home games in MLS playoffs, which we know home field is massive in those situations. So they're going to be a top 4 to 5 seed in the East because, I mean, they were a top 4 to 5 East team last year and they've gotten better. So I don't see how they drop if that defense stays that way.
And I somehow forgot to mention that they brought in Eric Williamson, who is, when that guy's healthy, is absolute quality. And then somehow they also managed to get Karol Swiderski out the door. So they have a DP spot open still. So, granted, it's early in the offseason, but like they can improve even more than what they already have, which is kind of amazing to think.
Now, all of this said, same wild card to you that I gave to Bryce. With all these nice things we've said about Charlotte, why is it Charlotte is winning absolutely nothing this season?
I was afraid you were going to ask that.
Well,
So
I asked it. Here we are.
yeah, why? Eric Williamson, Ashley Westwood, Wilfred Zaha, Tim. Those guys are all like. Ashley Westwood's been, pretty healthy, but a lot of those guys are, some of them are older. Tim Ream, older, tends to make you a little bit more injury prone. MLS is a very physical league. And so I think between that and, look, Privet and Malanda, as amazing as they were last year, young defenders make mistakes. And so Injuries, like I said, I love Wilfred Zaha. I loved watching him when he was with Manchester United and Crystal Palace. He was amazing to watch, but he's never exactly been a bastion of health. Like he's just always had an inability to stay healthy on the field, and so, but how Liel Abada, Pep Biel, and all that comes back. I don't know. They didn't exactly light the league up, last year. So all that I would say, injuries, age, and young defenders can be a recipe for disaster at times.
All right, Gavin, two excellent teams have been taken, so surely that means you're taking Inter Miami as your clear winner. Go ahead, I'm ready to hear it. Let me down, Gavin. I'm ready for the disappointment.
I'm staying as far away from Inter Miami as possible. We're keeping things interesting here. You're gonna have to pick Inter Miami, my friend. Austin FC get my selection, and a couple of good selections have already gone by, so I'm not sure I can.
Austin FC wasn't a valid selection.
So here's the thing. Austin
No.
FC played on January 24th. They played Charleston and they won 3-0.
So you're
They
going
won their
from,
preseason game.
So they
won a preseason
battered
game.
the battery.
Yeah, on Friday.
Reverse card.
Yep.
No, I didn't see it on their site though, Gavin.
Yeah, it's on MLS's site. It's on the preseason breakdown, schedule and results.
Interesting.
Gotta go over there.
You're going, but at the league offices, you're playing the technicality.
Yeah, I'm playing the technicality.
Well, I love technicalities. Proceed.
Okay, Austin FC, they are spending big. They got in a under 20 midfielder, U22 midfielder. He's 20 years old. Looks promising out of South America. They went and got La Liga 2, the second league, the top scorer in that league. They paid a record fee for him, Zuni, I think his name is. And he looks really promising. He's someone who has scored goals throughout his entire career. I was watching some YouTube clips of him when it was announced, and he just looks like someone who's going to score goals in this league. So that's exciting. Obviously, we can't forget Brandon Vazquez, and all of that together can paper over a lot of cracks. If you're scoring a lot of goals, like that can really help you if your defense is making mistakes. Plus, they've got a new coach in, Inigo Estevez. And while he didn't fully impress in his time in Dallas, his star players did struggle with injury while he was there. And his first season where he had a fit squad, he finished, I believe it was 4th in the West. And so I think he's going to have some learnings from his time in Dallas. He's going to make some changes. And you never know. You never know. They could go on a hot streak. They could go on a run towards the end of the season. You have Brandon Vazquez and Azuni scoring goals for fun in the playoffs, and then you're in the final. You never know.
We'll see. Look, Vazquez, I really appreciate his time in Cincinnati. He and Brenner were the joint record scoring striker pairing in MLS for a while. I think they were both 18 or 19 goals each in a season, and that set a record. And then he went to Monterrey and he tore it up initially, and then the back of the trading card came out on Vazquez.
Yeah,
which is he's definitely a confidence striker. I think if I recall his social media, he posted 2 soccer balls in his photo against Charleston Battery. So I'm assuming he talks about scoring goals and puts 2 soccer balls. I'm assuming that means he put 2 balls in the back of the net.
He scored 2 goals. As a former striker, he scored 2 goals.
Yeah. Now, that's great, but he doesn't score 2 goals every single match. And I would say maybe he does that in 3 matches this season. And I don't know. If he gets into a streak again, like he was at Monterrey, where he goes downhill, that it could go into a vicious cycle. So I truly hope for all the best for him, because we'll remember him fondly in Cincinnati.
So what I'm hearing is you're making my argument for me as to why Austin will not be winning a trophy this season.
Yeah, I need to hear a different argument from you, though, because I can't have me do all the work for you, Gavin.
Midfield and defensively, They just aren't strong enough. Ilie Sanchez is another year older, and he's not able to keep up. Owen Wolf and Danny Pereira, they are kind of on the downslope instead of the in form, because we've seen them both be in form. We've seen them both be in terrible form. So maybe this season they're still, not in the best form. And defensively, they're just a mess again, which we've seen previously. So that would be my argument there, that the rest of the squad does not keep up, and they have maybe a pretty good offense and a terrible defense.
Okay. I'm gonna throw another wild card at you because I can do that since I've got the host mic on this episode.
Constantly picking
Uh,
on me, Russell. Constantly.
Constantly pick Gavin. It's a dynamic and it's a tradition, and we have to honor it as
Let's hear
such.
it.
Bold prediction from you: is Austin winning the Copa Tejas this year?
Yeah, probably.
I feel like you're getting outside input for some
No,
reason.
no. My thoughts were on how Dallas and Houston have shed their big players and have not reloaded. And so I feel like Austin FC have been like investing heavily this offseason, and they're on an upward trajectory. And Dallas just got rid of all of their players, all of their somewhat quality players. Velasco, Ferreira, Areola, gone. There's someone else I'm not thinking of that left.
Yaramendi.
Oh, Aramendi, thank you. Yes. He's gone as well. And so their quality players are gone, and there hasn't been a lot coming in, I feel like. And then with Houston, they lost Hector Herrera, they lost Carrasquilla, and offensively, they are looking light there as well. They lost Ferreira, who that wasn't a big loss anyways, but still they lost him. Yeah. Austin will win Copa Tejas.
All right. If they win it, Gavin predicted it first. You all heard it here.
You bet.
Now I hate this because here's the thing. I would be hard pressed to pick another team over Miami from the list of qualified teams from that list. So I will take one for the team, and I will say Miami are going to win some trophies.
Boo, boo,
yeah, I don't feel good about it.
Homer.
I don't feel good about it. I'll tell you, I feel kind of gross saying it, but I think logically it makes a lot of sense that Miami, who we've talked about it earlier, they've brought in an enormous amount of talented young South American players who have something to prove and are in all likelihood going to end up in Europe on bigger teams because they're talented, quality players. And you've just reinforced a team that already set the record for most points in a season. You're bringing back Messi. You brought back Suarez for another season, who Suarez somehow didn't fall apart like we thought he would last year. He held it together, scored a ton of goals. Messi played in like half the matches, also scored a ton of goals, got a boatload of assists, won the MVP. And whether or not you agree with him winning the MVP, like the players overwhelmingly voted for Messi as MVP. And it's just like, and you're reinforcing that with a bunch of young players who, from a roster standpoint, are not hurting you at all in terms of how you're building out the team. And you can just keep on supplementing that team with high quality players, with proven people. And I think this will be another year of magic. I don't think they can do it 3 years in a row, but I could see Miami doing some sort of trophy run in some competition this year. It's not going to be Club World Cup, for the record. I don't think they do well in that. But whether it be, like another Leagues Cup run, or if they do like Supporters Shield again, or I hope it's not MLS Cup. I don't want them to win it. I let them win anything else. But I think they're going to win something this year. They have the depth for it. They have the talent. They just all have to listen to Messi. And we know that they're going to listen to Messi. And if they do, they'll do fine. And if they don't, they'll be reassigned like Raul Sanyehi.
let me
They still
boomerang.
Brad. They still Brad Guzan to get through.
Right. Let me boomerang you though, Russell. You said they're going to go for a run. Why are they going to walk away with 0?
Oh my gosh. And here's the thing, Bryce. I'm convinced that you can't possibly do 2 seasons of Magic is the thing. Like the fact that Suarez contributed so much and stayed for the most part so healthy. I mean, he's at an age where I don't see how you can sustain what he did last season for a second season. And similarly, you have Busquets, who he had a mostly good season, but he looked pretty shaky at very key moments. And I think teams will pick up on that when they see him again this year, and they're going to be able to pick that apart. Like, the core players who are going to play for Miami, and you can game plan for that. Yes, they have young, promising U22 players, but these guys aren't they're not the tacked on starters. Like, who's going to show up game after game for Miami. You can plan for that. And then you just plan for like these U22s and say, hey, these guys are going to lack experience, put them under pressure and see if they can keep their backs straight. And chances are they're not going to be able to do that every time. They haven't developed enough yet.
Don't forget too that probably their biggest loss this offseason, besides Diego Gomez, but their biggest loss was not on the field. It's Chris Henderson going to Atlanta. I mean, this was a guy who, Chris Henderson's pretty well known as like an elite guy at scouting talent. Like he drafted Yannick Bright, who, when these guys had injury crisis, and Messi, all these people are gone. Like Yannick Bright was huge, and he was a draft pick stuff. And so Chris Henderson's ability to navigate the cap and bring in talent at incredibly you know, young cheap deals is absolutely unmatched, and they just straight up let him walk out the door because of the Game of Thrones that's going on in the Miami front office.
Yeah, I feel nervous for Miami post Messi because what are you going to have left when he leaves? You'll have run out every single person who was here before him, and how many people are staying after him? So,
Yeah, I mean, I was also going to say at the managerial position too. That's another position that it's a significant downgrade. Like you have Tata Martino, who's won an MLS Cup in Atlanta, and who might have been like the best realistic option for someone that could navigate a locker room of Messi and Suarez and Alba, but also knows how to navigate Major League Soccer. And now you're going to Javier Mascherano, who his only experience is on the youth stage of a national team. And if you talk to Argentina fans, they said he didn't do a very good job at it either. So like I just don't know how he's going to do for a full season. And the MLS is it's such a unique league, and to just not have any experience around it whatsoever, it's going to be a tough task for him to navigate. I really don't know how well Miami's going to do this year when it comes to cup competitions, because there's some really good coaches in the East, and coaching matters. We've seen Wilfred Nancy take a Montreal side to second place and then come to Columbus and then just become the best team in the league in the 2 year period. And I just don't know how he's going to navigate. So they've had a couple big losses off the field.
I couldn't agree with you anymore, Bryce. Unfortunately, all the other ones I wanted to pick were taken, so this was the one I got stuck with. Thanks, guys.
You didn't want to
Appreciate
stick
that.
with
You
Cincy?
did tell us beforehand that, hey guys, make sure no one takes Miami because I really want to take them, but we'll let you have it.
Yeah, well, luckily we weren't recording when I said that, so no proof exists. Yeah, no, I maybe as a fun follow-up exercise, none of us picked any of our teams. Why is that? Like, why do we think our own teams aren't the ones that we want to pick? And Bryce, I recognize you couldn't pick Atlanta United because they lost to Chattanooga, which means they're officially out of the MLS season, before it even starts. But I mean, Orlando was an option, Gavin. You didn't want to take Orlando. I guess Dallas, I didn't see anything published about Dallas. So I couldn't tell you, and I guess we've talked about Bo, we've talked about why Dallas is in a bad spot when we were talking about Austin. And I didn't take Cincinnati. Certainly not. I just there's so many questions around Cincinnati right now, but I am curious, Gavin and Bryce, like, why do you guys think your own teams aren't going to win?
With Orlando, I mean, I spoke to it earlier. We got an injury in midfield, and we are already light in midfield. We had our two starters, which one of them, Wilder Cartagena, was the one who went down with the ruptured Achilles. And so now we're down to one recognized starter in midfield, and the rest are just recognized backups and our recognized backup quality. And so midfield, we're light. We had a midfielder who got taken in the draft. The front office was not expecting for him to be taken in the draft by San Diego FC, so they're kind of scrambling to get midfield players. We sold Facu Torres, and we did bring in an under 22 winger, but we're still looking for a DP winger, which isn't a big deal. But, first season in, you could hit and you could have a Gabriel Peck or a Paintsill, or you could miss and you could have any number of players who have struggled in their first season in the league. And so, and then it feels like last year was the year for Orlando to get out of the East and get to the final, and we failed. And I just have a little bit of lost trust that in a strong East, we're gonna get out of it when we couldn't even get out of it at our best opportunity. So, a little lack of trust from my end as well.
Bryce, if you could have picked Atlanta, would you have?
I wouldn't have. There's too many question marks. You know, First off, it's from the player standpoint. There's deals can be as close as they can be to finish the line, but right now they only have one designated player on the roster, and that's Alexei Miranchuk, who, went through the European schedule on an Atlanta side as reserve. I mean, had his moments where you're like, yeah, I can see why Atlanta spent 13 million on him, but then there's also plenty of times where he just disappeared. And I think Garth Lagerway's hedge on that is we didn't have the quality around him to really become the side we wanted. Um, so if they don't have the players that really open up, because Alexei Miranchuk's game is at its best when he can kind of spray those behind the back line through balls. So they really got to get speed opposite of Saba and speed at the striker position. And and if I'm being honest, as much as I love him, I don't know if 32-year-old Miguel Almiron is the answer to that. As much as I love him, and I think he's gonna be better at some things that he wasn't in 2018, 2017. But you know, his best trait is speed, and Garth has always said 25 to 29 is the prime age where we want uh, those DP attacking players, and he kind of upped it a little bit for the nostalgia. So we'll see. I think it's a fair argument I've seen saying, you know, if the name is Miguel Almiron, if you're getting a player that has the same profile but isn't who he is for the league and our franchise, do you spend the money and do you use the DP slot on him? I think it's a fair argument. I think he's still a great player, and I think he's still going to be one of the best players in the league, but I don't know how he's going to be, especially not in a central role where he was so good at when Atlanta took off in 2018, because it seems like they're going to have him out on the wing. So um, we'll see how it goes, but they have to get the striker over the line and just a first year manager. I don't think it all clicks on what Dyla will want to do in year one. NYCFC really took off for him in year two when he took over the side from Vieira, I guess it was. Um, so yeah, year two, year three is where it really took off for him before he went to Belgium, and I don't think they get the MLS Cup and get in contention for the MLS Cup in year one.
Bryce, if you don't mind me asking, does your opinion change at all on the Almiron deal if he's dropped in as a 10 and not playing as a winger? Because that was kind of my thought was, like you said, you want a really old guy in the wings, but if he's just like in the Thiago Almada role, does that make everyone feel better?
Which is interesting because Ronnie Dyla said that he wants a 10 that is going to press the living hell out of other teams, and that's not Miranchuk. So I'm like, okay, maybe they try Miranchuk in the middle, then they realize, we really need that, Maxi Morales guy that Dyla like loved so much in his system. I'm thinking maybe you put Ranchuk out as an inverted winger like he was in Atlanta. Maybe, Miggy controls the middle of the field. I think that could be an answer. I don't know if that's the first attempt they're going to have. I Because I guess it sounds like they're really bringing him into on the wing, but I'm very much open of trying to give him as much of the middle as possible to kind of take the game over because like from a skill wise he's still going to be a top player in the league, so if you lose the speed but then you just have more of the field, I think he's going to stand out a little bit more. So we'll see. I think my biggest concern is when they brought in Pity Martinez and Zico Barco, and they both wanted to play the same position in the post Almiron era, and they just like kept fighting for the ball at the same spot. I really hope that's not the same thing where they could put Miranchuk and Almiron as like an inverted winger. They're different players, but like I don't want them fighting for the same spots on the field. So that's that's where I'm kind of at right now.
Bo, I'm gonna throw another curveball your way this time instead. Instead of talking about why you wouldn't pick Dallas, let's instead change the question. The window for transfers hasn't, I think, officially opened yet, and preseason is still ongoing. As a Dallas fan, when would you start to panic if change in players and movement isn't happening?
So that's a great question. So, um, that's a really good question. In
And are
Dallas,
you panicking right now
a
trying to
little
answer
bit,
this
a little
question?
bit. So here's the thing: I have the chief soccer officer, whatever you want to call it, GM, technical director, blah blah blah. Andre Zanata here. I have no faith in him. I don't think that he has even the good signings like um, Asieri Yaramende was Nico brought him in. It was not Zanata. I have zero faith in his ability so far, but I do know that they have mentioned that they believe it was three signings are rumored in. I mean, right now we literally only have two center backs on the roster: Lala Sabubakar and Sebastian Nibiega, and neither one of them are MLS starting caliber center backs, in my opinion. If you're trying to actually compete, the other thing though, and the other thought is that so right now Toyota Stadium is undergoing a massive 3-year renovation. Over half of the stadium is closed off. So literally, like and for MLS, the vast majority of revenue comes from ticket sales and actual in-game stuff. So there's a kind of a thought going around of we've shed Jesus, we've shed Ariola, like we keep dumping all these guys. Capacity is going to be down for the next 3 years. For the next 3 years? Are they just going to be trying to, cut costs? Which is kind of crazy to say about these billionaires who own the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, kind of silly to say, but yeah, I'm already kind of panicking a little bit just because of who's at the helm.
That's fair. That's very fair. I love the tinfoil hat, by the way. It makes all the sense in the world, and that's what makes it, you know, maybe not just a tinfoil hat.
Yeah, again, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. Like I said, even with Petar Musa bringing, the signing, I'm not totally. So I have another tinfoil hat on that. So Jesus Ferreira, was supposed to go to Moscow or wherever, and then MLS pulled the plug on that. Well, I think that FC Dallas was probably like, hey, we'd already, had gone after the replacement and everything. It was Petar Musa. They had gotten Benfica. Well, the other thing that was going on at that time was FC Dallas was doing some weird, how clubs will do this like weird like collaboration, like, oh, we're working with blah blah blah. Well, FC Dallas and Benfica were working on one of those as well. So I think that Dallas may have been expecting a lot of money to come in, then that MLS pulled the plug, and then they're like, oh no, we're way too far down this road to pull out with Benfica because we're trying to get this other commercial thing going on. So I want to believe that that the club has ambitions. I don't think so, but again, it's January 27th. The night is still young, or whatever is. I say there's still hope, but in the words of the great prophet Ted Lasso, it's the hope that kills you.
Yeah. Look, this league is sustained entirely on vibes and hope. So, well, cool, cool.
So what about Cincinnati?
Let's not talk about Cincinnati. So I think my biggest worry, right? My biggest questions. You get to preseason, Lucho Acosta doesn't show up. Luca Orishano doesn't show up. Yuya Kubo doesn't show up. That is, and look, Yuya Kubo has been a great team guy. He's done everything that the team has asked him to, and he's done a pretty thankless job for many years, and he's gotten all the flack in the world from David. And so I personally blame David for the reason why Kubo's holding out on this one. But, you know, when you have your captain and league MVP holding out, maybe you can say, oh well, that's just the big name players. It's the diva type guys. They've got big personalities and they want things done their way, and they want the front offices to bend to them. Okay, I can get it. Maybe I can buy in on that. Luca Orishano, he's holding out. Well, it's because in theory, well, there's a big contract waiting for him at Cruz Azul, and he really wants to go because his salary can't be doubled in MLS because of the roster rules, and Cruz Azul is saying, well, more than double your salary. And he's holding out hoping he can get a big payday, and who wouldn't, right? Okay. Again, not ideal, but I get it. Now you have Yuya Kubo holding out, and it's just like, once, fine, coincidence. Two, I'm starting to get worried. Three's a pattern. Something is going on, and it's either maybe it's like a team culture issue. It could be a locker room personality issue. There are whispers in FC Cincinnati land that there's been this huge falling out between the general manager and quite a number of players. And, people point to various points in the season when, the team magically just got worse out of nowhere. And, everyone's got their red strings on their thumb boards where they're saying, that it all leads back to like this general manager and on everyone's, vision boards here. And for me, like, regardless of whatever the explanation is, that is so much noise and distraction, and it's uncertainty. And how do you build a cohesive vision for a team, whether it be 5 years down the line, whether it be 5 months down the line, if your players are holding out and there's rumors abounding that none of them want to work with the general manager, like, I am very nervous because we've talked about it. A good GM, those off-field hires, a good coach, they matter in this league. They matter a lot. And Cincinnati right now is sitting, over $1 million away from roster compliance on their roster alone. And if all these other teams know, oh, these players don't want to play with this GM, they don't want to work with this GM, why are you going to make a good deal with Cincinnati right now? Cincinnati's going to have to take some sort of big loss to get compliant. And that scares me because I don't know who it's going to be on.
Bad locker rooms can ruin seasons.
Yeah. And
Right.
we're not even at the season yet. It's January.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's all like the really good clubs are the ones that like they can get those like hits in that 1 to 2 year window, and then they can sustain it. I always think of like LA Galaxy just for a long time just looked very lost, and then Will Kuntz comes in and ties it together in one off season. And it's like Atlanta, like they had their great 3 year window, but when Carlos Bocanegra was asked, do it again after you get rid of all the guys that you brought in, then it's just like an opposite hit rate there. So in this league, you really understand who the good front offices are when they have to do it in a recycled format, and you see that with LAFC. They're hitting on all of these players consistently, and they're keeping the players there happy, and the players that leave still love the club and everyone within it. So I, all of this leaking is not good.
Has Cincinnati already used their buyout this offseason? Because I'm wondering, like,
No,
because Sergio Santos is sitting on just under almost $1 million a year, and
They
I
could
have
have
so many
declined his
questions. Like
option.
he must have witnessed Albright murder someone, or so. It's the only explanation.
nobody knows why. I Cincinnati had the ability to decline his option in the offseason. They didn't have to pick it up. And not only did they pick it up, they gave him a raise. And it's just like, you could have declined it and brought him back if you think he's a great locker room guy because you know you're going to be in this tight roster situation. And maybe they were counting on, you know, they were counting their chickens before they hatched. And maybe they were saying, oh, well, we're going to sell all these guys and we're going to get all this money. Like there were rumors that Lucho Acosta was being shopped last summer by Chris Albright. And him not showing up sure makes it feels like those rumors are substantiated. There's a falling out between them. And maybe the idea is they were going to get all this money selling off these players and bringing in different guys, and it wouldn't matter that Santos was on $1 million. But like at the end of the day, that was a decision that they made, and it's contributing to their roster woes. And I don't see them buying out Santos. Honestly, I don't see them using any of the buyouts because
You don't think they
they,
buy out Acosta?
oh no,
That's where my head
like
went.
Or Corey Baird.
I, I Corey Baird would be another one that people look at and they're just like, there is, Corey Baird seems like a real stand up guy. He's on a very large contract that I don't think many teams in this league would want. And I think you could have plenty of teams that would be fine to take him on a different size contract, but not on the almost 800 something thousand he's on. And yeah, Cincinnati has historically not used their buyouts, or when they do use them, they are on very low salary players. Like we're talking guys on like 80 grand.
Or they get the league to take care of it for them.